everyone, this is Tamara from shelfaddiction.com and welcome to episode 109. Tonight on Book Chat, I'm talking with Amy Feld. Amy is a child psychologist, reading addict, and mom to 3 cats. She loves reading YA books with psychological components, mysteries, thrillers, and women's fiction. We're here to share our do's and don'ts of editorial book reviewing. Tonight's episode is geared toward those that enjoy doing online book reviews. Amy's social media links are below in the show notes, so if you'd like to connect to her, you know where to find her. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it. Show your support by rating the podcast and leaving a positive review on iTunes. The podcast can also be found on the Spreaker app, YouTube, Google Play Music, the Stitcher app, and more. If you'd like to email in feedback or questions, feel free to reach out to me at info@shelfaddiction.com or call in and leave an internet voice message on SpeakPipe. I look forward to hearing from you. The link is in the show notes. Hey, Amy, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? And thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I'm doing well, and I'm actually really excited about today's topic because lately I've had more than one person complain to me about reviews, and I've also had some people on my review team ask me about preferences as far as reviewing. So I thought this would be a great opportunity, since you have, some knowledge base with reviewing, for us to kind of cover this topic and help the reviewers out.
I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. So we both did 5 and 5, 5 do's and 5 don'ts. And these, I guess, are our top 5. And you guys take it with a grain of salt. But definitely, we're experienced reviewers. So I hope that you're able to get something out of it. All right, Amy, Since you're the guest, why don't you kick things off with your first do?
Okay. Find something both negative and positive to say, because if your review is all negative or all positive, readers will think that you're biased. Mm-hmm. So, in every book, there's something that could have been a little bit better, or something, even a terrible book, there's something that's not awful.
Right. I totally agree with you, because let me tell you, there's one person that I know personally that it seems like she likes every single book, and she can't say anything critical about it. And I just I don't trust her taste in books because of that.
Yes, exactly. You want to have authenticity. Yeah.
And the bottom line is you're not going to like everything you read. It's just not possible.
Exactly.
Well, that's great advice. I say my first do is develop a format that is unique to your style. So what I mean by that is, everyone doesn't have to be robots and review in the same manner. I think my style is unique in that, I like to add a lot of media things to my reviews, like snippets and videos and other multimedia things in addition to my review of the book or audiobook. So if you like something, like some people like to use a lot of quotes, or some people like to do excerpts of the book, or some people, it's just addition, things that you can add on top of your review as well as your reviewing style. So develop your own, try out a couple things until you get comfortable, and just keep going with it.
I use a grade system, like A+, A-, B, C. And then I do how many stars as well. And then I start off with a summary, and then I talk about the writing, then I talk about the plot, and then I sort of wrap it up with a summary in most of the time. Mm-hmm. Although sometimes if there's a book that really makes me think, or that's very topical, or that has a different dimension, I might go off on a tangent. Like, if a book has rape culture in it, I'll talk a little bit about rape culture and how it's important to become aware of this, and how the book addresses it in a positive or a negative way.
Right. Well, that's kind of the cool thing about editorial book reviewing, right? It's different than reviewing for school. You can do pretty much what you want to do. And you did kind of mention the summary. I don't like to put plot summaries because I use the synopsis from the publisher, and I try to keep my review spoiler free. I want to talk about things like pacing and writing style and character development and, the whole lot of things without telling you major plot points, because I feel like that's for you to discover. I can tell you about the book and how I liked it or didn't like it without spoiling it for you.
That's a good point, because spoilers, unless you flag the post spoiler,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really fair to the reader, and they're not going to want to come back if you've spoiled the book.
Right. So I've mentioned this on another podcast, you guys. I really despise that. I do not think you should be spoiling major plot points for the reader. I mean, that really takes the fun away from them. They do care about your opinion as a reviewer. That's why they're reading it. But they don't want a book review. They don't want a guideline or an outline of what happened every step of the book. That's not what they're looking for.
For me, the reason that I like doing a summary is because sometimes the blurb isn't actually true to what the book is. And I don't like to waste my money on books that aren't interesting to me. So I want to help the readers if they're expecting one thing from the back of the book, if they're expecting a thriller and it's a character study, a slow paced character study, I want that to focus on in my summary. But I guess that you address that in different ways when you talk about pacing.
Yeah. And I agree. That's a good thing to point out. Like, what you see is not what you're going to get, but I still am not going to tell you exactly what it is.
Yes.
All right. So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is, if you have an if you can't be objective, state your bias. For instance, I'm a child psychologist, so I'm really picky about authenticity of psychiatric disorders and the therapeutic process. So I will add that caveat before criticizing that in a book, because a lot of the things that are picky to me, a lot of readers won't bother them. Right. So I put my bias out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's a smart thing to do. That's fair. In that way, if you're skewing one way or another, the reader of the, review won't be calling you out for all sorts of things because you stated it, right? This is where I am. So this is why I think about this in this way. So absolutely. Yeah, that's good advice as well.
And yours?
Okay. So I also review audiobooks on my blog, and my biggest pet peeve with people who review audiobooks is sometimes they don't even talk about the narration. They don't talk about the voice actor that's doing the narration. And that's like the biggest part of an audiobook. So if you're going to read an audiobook or listen to an audiobook, you have to address how the narrator did with the voices, the inflections, was it dry? Could you tell the different characters apart? There's a lot as an audiobook listener that I like to hear about before I pick up an audiobook, and the narration is number 1. So I don't know if you listen to any audiobooks,
No,
Amy,
I've
but
never listened to an audiobook.
Oh, well, you should dab into it. I mean, even if, I like audiobooks because I work a lot, so I can't read a book while I'm sitting at my desk, right? Or I can't read a book while I'm traveling 30 minutes to and from work. I prefer an audiobook over the radio. And it just helps, get more reading done faster because I don't have a job where I can sit and read all day long. But, it's not for everyone. But if it is for you and you like to review audiobooks as well as regular books like I do, then definitely be sure to address the narration.
That's an excellent point.
So what's next on your list?
This is actually my last one because I combined a couple of them when we were talking before. Write well. Write your review well. Check punctuation and check sentence structure, because the last thing you want to do is criticize a writer for not writing well and you're not writing well in the review.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's funny because on my side, I said cite technical issues and be critical, but that ties into yours because you can't use bad grammar while you're criticizing their bad grammar.
Yeah, it sort of makes you a little bit of a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But to me, that's important though. Like, okay, I am not, I'd like to think that I really double check and triple check my work. But a tip that I can offer for that is, honestly, if you write a review one day, you can look at that thing 3 or 4 times and still miss things. If you put it away and come back like a day or 2 later, you'll be like, whoa, blaring.
Yes.
Right? So that will help you with that.
For sure.
Yeah, so the last minute reviewers, like sometimes I like to write a review the last minute, and every time I do that, I just kick myself because I have to go back and make corrections. So I really try not to do the last minute thing. So I do have the time to, come away from it and then come back and re-review it. Or reread it rather. All right. So next on my list, is remember that it's your opinion. What you're saying, honestly, it's not really fact. It's an opinion. So just remember that, unless you're talking about, yes, they use the wrong, version of okay, that might be fact, but your opinion on the pacing, your opinion on the character development, those are opinions. So just remember that, I try to state in my review that it's my opinion instead of, I think it comes off less aggressive when you're just saying, hey, this is what I thought about it.
Yeah, this didn't work for me.
Right.
I agree, because if you write in a way that it's fact, then you're inviting criticism when people disagree with you.
Yep. And they have this saying, I think it's no 2 people ever read the same book, and it's the truth.
Yeah, I know that there have been books that I really liked that critiquers disliked, and vice versa. Things that are important to me in the book that jump out that aren't important, that someone else will find something that I just didn't even pick up on. Yeah.
And it's like, and I've done the same thing where I've read a review and I'm like, wow, I didn't think of it that way, but I kind of agree with that, So that's kind of the fun of reading reviews, in my opinion, especially after I'm done, drawing my own opinion about the book or whatever. And then I read others, and it kind of really does help develop a conversation about it.
When do you read reviews? Do you read reviews before reading the book, after reading the book? Combination?
Both. So first, if it's a book that I'm going to read no matter what, like if it's a series that I'm into, I don't really care about the reviews before I read it because I'm just going to read it. If it's a book that I'm kind of hemming and hawing around, I don't really know if I want to, I'll look at the worst of the reviews. And I do that because the glowing reviews, they're just fangirling all over it.
And they could be related to the writer, especially if there aren't a lot of reviews.
Right. So I look at the bad ones and the 3-star and under, and I don't read a lot of them. I feel like I try to pick maybe 5 or less.
That's funny because I read the bad reviews too, because I want to know if it's something that I can't tolerate or that's something that's going to ruin the book for me.
Absolutely. But in doing that, you do run the risk because not everyone follows the spoiler rule and at least puts spoiler tags. So some people are respectful and will put the spoiler tag before they tell you the exact plot issue they had, but some people don't. So you might be spoiled when you read reviews.
If I'm writing a bad review, I check spoiler because I often want to say why the review is bad so they can check it at their own risk. If they want to see why I didn't like it, they know it's going to be a spoiler.
Yeah, and that's like absolutely, it's not technically on our list, but we both agree. If you're going to do spoilers, that's fine, but please tag it. Put the spoiler alert at the beginning or wherever the spoiler starts so people can choose to skip that portion or choose to read it. Give them the choice. Now,
what do you consider a spoiler? How far into the book?
Well, to me, a spoiler would be, for example, when I found out the killer was his sister, I thought that was dumb. Okay, you just told me who the killer was.
Yes.
I hate that. Like, if it's a mystery, I'm supposed to figure that out for myself. Or, that cliffhanger. I mean, sometimes I don't like when people spell out what the cliffhanger is.
Right.
Or,
well, that's telling the end of the book.
Right, exactly. But
Yes,
people do it.
I
People
know.
do it.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, do you have another one on the do list?
The rest of mine are don'ts.
Okay, well, I do have one more on my do list, and that's just like be honest. And by that, I mean, earlier Amy had mentioned list some positive with the negative, and that's what I call the sandwich approach, right? Okay, I liked the idea of the book, but I didn't like this, but in the end, something positive. So that way it doesn't come across that you're just bashing it. But in that same respect, don't feel like you need to give a positive review because you're posting a review. Don't feel like that. Be honest about it, but be fair about it.
When I write a review, I think of it as a service to the reader to decide whether or not they want to spend their money to purchase a book.
I agree. It's a service to the reader, not the author. And I think that's how come some authors get themselves in trouble. That whole authors behaving badly thing that was going on off and on. They think because they give you a book, you're supposed to give it a good review. And that is not the truth. That is not the truth. So check yourselves, authors, before you give a book review or a review. You should expect an honest, thoughtful review, not a good one necessarily.
I think that I wish that writers would just say thank you if it's a good review and not say anything if it's a bad, if they don't like the review. Because I've had writers come on and they'll be, oh, I'm sorry you didn't like the book more. Well, I mean, it wasn't a book that they gave me. It was a book that I had purchased myself. So I don't really need to know that you're disappointed. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Exactly. Like, I don't really care. I don't really care about that. Oh my gosh. But,
I just have to say one pet peeve is when, well, two pet peeves, they're sort of the same, is when a writer reviews her own book.
You can't do that.
Yeah, I don't get that. And also when people review the book before it's been published and they haven't read it yet, but they like the writer, so they gave it a 5 because they're excited the book's coming out.
Yeah.
You don't know you're going to like it.
Yeah.
I can't trust you.
True. Exactly. And I hate and people are good for that on Goodreads, especially. They are excited about the second book, so they'll put 5 stars on that thing a year before it even comes out. Like, really?
And that doesn't help the reader.
No, because it skews the actual rating, because a lot of the times they don't come back and update those reviews.
Yes.
So it skews it. And it's like, that's not good. People need to stop doing that immediately.
For sure.
Okay, so let's talk about our don'ts when it comes to fiction book reviews.
Sure.
You want to kick that off, Amy?
Don't get personal about the book, the writer, or the comment, or the commenters. If you're having a strong visceral reaction, take a deep breath and ask yourself why. Because your review is not going to seem credible if you go after the author or if you just have a whole page about every little thing that's wrong with the book.
I agree. I mean, that kind of ties into mine where it's don't trash the author. It's like, again, you can talk about the book and criticize the book, but keep it professional. Don't make it personal, like you said. Also, you probably don't want to get into arguments with commenters either.
Not. I think it's also important not to apologize for your opinion. Your opinion is your opinion. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be sorry that you didn't like the book.
And I know sometimes it may be hard for people who don't like a fan favorite. When you go against the grain, sometimes people get really nasty about it, but you don't have to apologize.
No, and that was another one of my don'ts. Don't be afraid to go against the grain and have your own advice. Have your own review that's different from everyone's. People appreciate that. Mm-hmm. They might not like your review, but they appreciate it. And
that's the most important thing is like you were saying earlier, we're writing these reviews essentially for readers, not for the author, not to be in league with the other reviewers. It's for readers that don't write reviews. It's for readers that are spending money on books. That's who your audience is. That's who they should,
Right.
That's who the audience should be anyway. So, okay. So mine's is, don't promise a positive review. And I mentioned this earlier, when you get books from publicists and authors, and giveaways and all these random places that you get books for free, never, ever in your life promise a good review in exchange for that book. It should be an honest, like I said earlier, thoughtful review. And if they can't agree to that, if they can't agree to those terms, then don't review the book.
I agree. A blanket, I'm going to like this book, it isn't fair to the reader, and it's just not honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes I wonder about people. I feel like some reviewers do this. Like if it's a big name author or a big publisher, I feel like some, not, and it's probably a small percentage, but sometimes I'll go on this, you might start looking up a book, right? And then you'll find this plethora, like everyone and their mother just loves this book. And all the reviews sound kind of the same.
Yeah, and you wonder, is it your mother? Is it the author's mother who wrote all those reviews?
Right. Right. I'm like, what is happening here? Like something is off. And I would never trust that. So, and for the readers out there, you shouldn't trust that either. Like, those should be red flags for you that, maybe this isn't the most honest review.
And it's hard not to like a book from your favorite writer. Because you want to, and you sort of do feel loyal to the writer, but you got to be honest, or else you're not a very good reviewer.
Yeah. And I've had to do that, like on long running series. Sometimes, I'll have to say, this wasn't the best. It needed work. It's like, right. It was filler or whatever.
Yeah. So-and-so is one of my favorite writers, but this wasn't my favorite of hers. There's ways to say it that don't slam the writer and still say, hey, I really still like you, but
this one just didn't do it for me. All right. Do you have another?
Don't be ambiguous. Be specific. Because if you're too out there, you're not really giving the reader information.
Like you're just like riding the middle. You don't know if it's good or bad. Yeah. And to me, that's not a real review. It's like you just don't want to say, I almost wonder if you're too ambiguous. Did you even read the book? Everything was okay. Everything was in the middle. Okay, sure. Okay, so I have another don't. And I think that me and Amy disagree on this don't a little bit. But my don't is don't post DNFs, and that's do not finished. And as a reviewer, I don't do that for books that have been given to me in exchange for a review. If I say I'm going to review it, I read the whole book. I don't DNF those because I've promised to review the book, good, bad, or whatever. But if it's something like, as a reviewer and a reader, I have books that I read on my own outside of the review process. And if I don't like it, I'll stop then as well, and I don't necessarily post them, but I'm not opposed to seeing people post DNFs, but just not if you've promised a review.
I'm a little bit different on that. I try very hard to review it, to finish reading every book that's given to me from NetGalley or for free from the author or whatever. But sometimes I just can't. Sometimes I just can't force myself to do it. Even through skimming. Sometimes I'll skim just to get to the end. But if I can't finish it, I want the readers to know that I can't. And I do apologize for that. I'm sorry I couldn't finish the book. It was just I try to do like a sentence or two about why it was so difficult for me, or why I was unable to force myself to read it.
I'd almost rather, Like, if it was that bad for me, I'd almost rather just not post at all. I mean, and to me, that's just say a lot if I'm not going to post anything.
Yeah, you would prefer me not to post a review about your book.
Yeah, it's that bad. It's that bad. And, you know, honestly, in my early days, I had a book that was given to me by, you know, a self-published author, and it was awful. It was just, it took everything in me to just keep pushing through that book. And I really wanted, I mean, that was one of the worst books I'd ever read in my life. And it took so much thinking and, you know, plotting my review basically so that it just didn't come across like, why did you even publish this thing? It was a waste. Well, so it's difficult.
For me, reading, yes. For me, reading is pleasurable. It's a hobby. And if it feels too much like work and if it's making me miserable, I'm not going to finish reading it, because then reading becomes a chore, and I don't want reading to be that for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is why, honestly, and I think maybe it might be a part of me being a more seasoned reviewer, or because I have a decent sized audience. But now I really pick and choose what I will review. If someone says, hey, I have this book, I won't say, okay. If it doesn't look like it's in my genre, you know, in my wheelhouse, if it doesn't look enjoyable, if the cover art looks bad, like someone slapped it on there. I mean, I refuse books because I don't want to be in that state where it's a job. Yes. I still want to read what I want to read that feels, you know, it's in the wheelhouse that I enjoy most. I haven't
refused any books yet. But I'm sure there'll come a time, especially if I'm reviewing more books, that I'll say, I don't think so.
Yeah, because time is tight. Because, you know, like I was saying earlier, I work all day. So this is my, you know, side gig, I guess, quote unquote. So I am not going to be forcing myself to read all these random books where there are other books, you know, no disrespect to self-pub, no disrespect to small press. But if I'm not familiar and it's not my wheelhouse and things don't look like they align with my taste, I'm not going to make time to read them because my time is just so short already. You know, I hope I said that right. I didn't want to offend anyone, but, you know, I'm just trying to be honest.
I agree. Let's just talk a little bit about our own process. When during a book do you know pretty much how many stars you're going to give the book, or did you wait until the very end to really know?
I wait until the very end, and sometimes I wait after the very end, because when I first close a book, I may have in my head 4. And then 2 days later, when I sit down to write the review, I'm like, well, I didn't like that, and this wasn't that great, and yeah, that kind of annoyed me. And then it might end up being a 3 when it's all said and done, you know? So my immediate, you know, post closing the book rating might be different from my review time rating.
Always think when I'm reading, if the book is really good, I think, oh, this is going to be a 5-star review. I don't necessarily give it a 5-star after it's finished, but I get inklings of, you know, this is a 2-star, this is that. But then I don't. Well, I mean, sometimes I even change the number of stars after I've written the review, and I think, ooh, I really did put a lot of criticism on there. I should rate down, or I liked more than I thought I did. I'll rate up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, rating is always a tough thing. And for me, I do not dole out 5 bookmark ratings. I use the term bookmarks instead of stars on my blog, but I don't give those out freely. You're not going to come to Shelf Addiction blog and find like 70% 5 stars. You're going to find 30% 5 stars, because I want to make the distinction between books that I think are stellar and books that I just think are great. You know, like a lot of books fall in the 4 for me. Like, I really enjoyed it. You know, I had minimal problems with it, but for me, that 5 is like that, you know, the best of the best.
For me, a 5 means that I want to reread it. I want to reread it at some point, because I do a lot of rereading of books that I really enjoy. And if I think I never want to see that book again, well, it's not getting a 5.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say probably maybe 15% of the books I read are 5 stars. I don't think it's as high as yours with 30.
Yeah. Yeah, I was probably guessing. It's probably lower. I don't know. I have hundreds and hundreds of reviews. I'm not sure anymore. I don't know. But that's like a great piece of advice for the reviewers. If you're reviewing, I mean, again, it kind of speaks to what we were saying earlier. You need to be a critical reviewer and be cautious about just doling out 5s for everything. I mean, people won't trust your opinion if you think everything is great.
Or if you think everything is lousy, they also won't trust your opinion.
Right. So if everything is 1 star, everything is DNF, I think you're in the wrong business. I don't think so. There's that median of, but again, maintaining your honesty and being honest with the reader.
And once in a while, when I reread a book, I'll change from 4 stars to 5 stars or 5 stars to 4 stars, because sometimes books for me don't hold up on the rereading, or they're even better than I realized. But that's rare. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do any other styles of reviewing other than just written reviews?
No, I've never done other styles.
Okay. Because on my side, I've done video book reviews. I've done podcast book reviews. And I like those other formats, but I still find myself always coming back to written reviews. I feel like I just enjoy it better, I think, than video or audio when it comes to reviewing a book.
For me, video is more disruptive to view. So, and the same with audio. It's more disruptive to the multitasking I'm usually doing. So I'd rather just read the review and have it quiet.
Yeah. And that's like a whole nother subject we could twist off into if we wanted to. Maybe we can in another episode. But, the way readers are consuming reviews nowadays is kind of transforming a little bit. I don't think traditional book reviews are getting as many views as they used to versus YouTube
that's a very good point. And I'm probably older than you, so I'm probably a little slower to get up to what the younger people are doing.
Yeah. So, everyone that's listening, if you consume other types of book reviews other than on a blog, written, comment, let me know, tweet at me. I would love to hear your feedback, because if I get enough feedback on that, we might do an episode about other forms of reviews and do's and don'ts, or, what we like, what we don't like. I don't know. It's open. So I'm curious to see how many of you will say, yes, I watch YouTube over reading it. Yes, I listen to podcast reviews over reading it. I'm very curious by that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our time.
Oh, me as well. Thank you for coming on, Amy. It was fun. And hopefully we can come together again on another episode. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day. And thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for streaming, downloading, all that fun stuff. I appreciate you. And until next time, happy reading. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in and downloading today's episode. If you are enjoying the book chat episodes and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. First, you can head on over to iTunes and give a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. You can follow the Shelf Addiction podcast on Spreaker, the only place where you can listen live and get broadcast notifications so that you never miss a live episode. Most importantly, you can share the podcast with friends and family that love books and audiobooks. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.